It was supposed to be the happiest time of the year, a snowy Christmas Eve in a quiet Colorado town, where the crackle of a fireplace meant warmth and the smell of gingerbread brought back memories of childhood. But in one horrifying instant, holiday cheer turned into a parent's worst nightmare. A devastating house fire tore through the Parker family's vacation rental just past midnight. Flames lit up the sky like a twisted fireworks show, and screams echoed through the frozen trees. When first responders arrived, the house was nearly ash. The fire department's report was blunt, final, and soul-crushing. The twin 6-year-olds, Max and Mason Parker, were presumed dead, their remains never conclusively identified. Their mother, Lauren Parker, who had barely escaped the inferno, was left with nothing but a haunting memory and a lifetime of grief. No caskets. No closure. Just ashes and heartbreak. But what if everything she was told was a lie? What if 6 years later, in a bustling airport terminal, she spotted two boys with the same golden curls, the same dimpled chins, the same nervous smile Max used to flash when he was caught sneaking cookies? Hold on to that image. Because what you're about to hear isn't just another story. It's a mystery buried under official reports, closed case files, and a mother's relentless intuition that wouldn't let her move on. This isn't fiction. It's a real-life, jaw-dropping unraveling of truth, betrayal, and the kind of maternal sixth sense that makes you question everything you think you know about loss, identity, and who to trust. If you're a parent, or even if you've ever deeply loved someone, you're going to feel this in your bones. Because there's something universally terrifying about losing a child. But there's something even more disturbing about the possibility that someone stole them right out from under you and convinced the world they were gone forever. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like your gut was screaming the truth, even when everyone else told you to let go? That's exactly where Lauren was. 6 years of therapy. 6 years of trauma anniversaries. 6 years of trying to heal when her heart knew something wasn't adding up. And when she saw those boys, now around 12 years old, at the Denver International Airport, wearing matching backpacks led by a man she had never seen before, her entire world shifted. Not just because they looked familiar, but because one of them turned his head, locked eyes with her for a split second, and froze. The way her Max used to do. The tilt of his head. The flicker of recognition. That wasn't just coincidence. That was connection. And that was the moment she knew. Now, I know what you're thinking. How is that even possible? Could her twins have actually survived the fire? Why would someone lie? Who gains from pretending 2 kids died in a fire when they were actually alive and taken? And most importantly, where have they been all these years? You're here because you want those answers, and I promise you, this story will deliver. But not in the way you're expecting. I'm going to walk you through every twist, every uncovered clue, every chilling realization that led Lauren from a moment of airport déjà vu to a truth more heartbreaking and bizarre than any crime series you've binged. This isn't just a story, it's a roller coaster. And trust me, you don't want to jump off halfway. I'm talking directly to you now, yes, you. You're probably watching this on your phone, maybe late at night, maybe while scrolling through other videos with titles like Unsolved Disappearances or Creepy Real-Life Mysteries. But I want you to stay here with me, because this one, it's different. It's not just a case. It's not just a story. It's a battle cry from a mom who refused to accept what the world told her was truth. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly how powerful a mother's love can be. Powerful enough to unravel secrets, powerful enough to challenge authorities, and maybe even powerful enough to bring her sons home. We'll meet the firefighter who first reported seeing 2 small shadows fleeing into the trees that night, only to be silenced in later reports. We'll hear from the neighbor who saw a dark SUV speeding away moments before the blaze. And you'll hear Lauren herself describe that split second at the airport that reignited her fight. You'll see actual footage, real evidence, and interviews with the people who doubted her and those who finally started to believe. What makes this story so gripping isn't just the mystery, it's the raw human emotion behind it. Because we've all lost something, haven't we? Maybe not a child, maybe not in a fire, But we've all faced that terrifying moment where we had to choose between what our heart believes and what the world is telling us. This video is about that moment. It's about trust, broken and rebuilt. It's about grief, and how it can cloud or clarify. And it's about courage, because Lauren didn't just trust her instincts. She risked everything to follow them. There's a reason this story is exploding across YouTube right now. It's because more and more people are waking up to the idea that some tragedies might not be what they seem. That behind every accident there could be a cover-up, a motive, a hidden agenda. And when children are involved, the stakes couldn't be higher. So if you've ever clicked on videos like CCTV footage solves missing child case, or she thought her daughter was dead until she saw her in a mall 10 years later, then trust me, you're in the right place. Because this one will stay with you long after the video ends. I want you to lean in. Pay attention. Because in just a few minutes, you're going to see the first piece of evidence that shattered the entire case wide open, a time-stamped airport surveillance clip that officials tried to keep out of public records. A clip that shows two boys, twins, flinching at the sound of their real mother's voice. That moment, it changed everything. So don't go anywhere. Don't skip ahead. Because every detail matters. And the next few seconds will take us back to the night of the fire, to a missing fire escape, a suspicious insurance policy, and the chilling question that nobody wanted to ask until now. But here's the thing. What if the fire wasn't meant to kill? What if it was meant to distract? Stay right here, because we're just getting started. Before that night, Lauren Parker was just another suburban mom trying to hold everything together. School drop-offs, grocery runs, soccer practices, and the constant, invisible weight of motherhood that only other moms seemed to fully understand. She wasn't rich, but she wasn't struggling either. She and her husband, Adam, were building a life that looked good from the outside. White picket fences, Christmas cards with matching outfits, weekend hikes in the Rockies. But behind that smiling family photo on the mantle, things weren't quite so picture-perfect. There had been tension in the marriage, and though they kept it quiet, the cracks were starting to show. Adam had recently taken on a new business venture that seemed too good to be true, some kind of joint real estate deal with a longtime friend from college that promised big returns, fast. It demanded long hours, secretive meetings, and more than a few late-night phone calls that Lauren never got answers about. She chalked it up to stress, even convinced herself it was harmless. But after the fire, that same business partner vanished off the face of the earth. No statements. No condolences. Just gone. In the years that followed, Lauren tried to rebuild, but nothing ever felt solid again. She moved back in with her parents temporarily, then tried renting an apartment in Boulder to get away from the memories that clung to every square foot of their former home. She went through the motions, therapy, support groups, grief counseling, but the truth is, she never really believed Max and Mason were gone. Not entirely. It wasn't just denial. It was deeper than that. She remembered how quickly authorities moved to close the case. How eager they were to label it an accident and move on. How the coroner's report used language that felt more vague than definitive, phrases like consistent with and presumed deceased, instead of concrete facts. And she remembered the one thing nobody could ever explain, why there were 2 extra suitcases found in the back of the SUV parked outside the cabin. 2 suitcases that didn't belong to Lauren or Adam. 2 bags filled with boys' clothes, toothbrushes, and toys that hadn't been packed for the trip. It was quietly filed away, dismissed as a mix-up. But Lauren never forgot. In the months leading up to that fateful sighting at the airport, Lauren had started digging again. She'd created burner email accounts, posted anonymously on message boards about missing children, even reached out to private investigators who specialized in cold cases. One of them, a former FBI agent turned freelance investigator named Helen Grant, agreed to meet. She didn't make promises. She'd seen too many grieving parents fall into rabbit holes they couldn't climb out of, but she listened. And what she heard disturbed her enough to take the case. Helen combed through the original fire reports, interviewed neighbors who had moved away, and uncovered something Lauren had never seen before, a photo taken by a tourist at a scenic overlook just 10 miles from the cabin, time-stamped 40 minutes after the fire supposedly consumed everything. In the background, Two small figures could be seen walking hand in hand toward a forest trail, accompanied by an adult whose face was turned away from the camera. The children were wearing the same pajamas Max and Mason had been photographed in that Christmas Eve. But this is where the story begins to twist in ways that make it hard to tell truth from misdirection. As Lauren followed lead after lead, she kept running into walls, some bureaucratic, some personal. A social worker who claimed to remember the boys from a foster care file in Nebraska suddenly changed her statement. A pastor who had helped fire victims that winter declined to speak. Then there was the anonymous voicemail Lauren received in the middle of the night, just a child's voice whispering, "Mom," before the line went dead. When traced, the call came from a prepaid phone bought with cash in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and never used again. Was it a cruel prank? Or a cry for help from one of her sons? No one could say for sure. Adding to the confusion was Adam, who had moved on in the most literal sense. He'd relocated to Florida, remarried, and started a new family. When Lauren confronted him with her suspicions, his reaction was cold and dismissive. "You're seeing what you want to see," he told her. "Our boys are gone, Lauren. Let them rest." But there was something in his eyes, something Lauren couldn't quite put her finger on. Fear? Guilt? Or just exhaustion from years of grief? She didn't know. But he refused to engage further and blocked her number days later. That's when Lauren began to suspect that Adam knew more than he let on. Maybe not about the fire itself, but about what came before. About the deal with his mysterious partner. About the insurance policy that had quietly been updated just 3 weeks prior to the trip. It wasn't damning on its own, but it was enough to raise questions. And then there was the payout. A 7-figure check that Adam cashed within days of the tragedy, supposedly to cover funeral expenses and relocate. But according to bank records, most of that money vanished into offshore accounts and shell companies that no one could trace. Lauren's world had become a maze of shadows and half-truths. The more she uncovered, the less she understood. It was as if the people around her, friends, family, officials, were all reading from the same script. Move on. Stop digging. Accept the loss. But she couldn't. Not when her heart screamed that her boys were out there. Not when the pieces didn't fit. And especially not when her last conversation with Max echoed in her mind every single night. He'd said something strange just before bedtime that Christmas Eve. Something about a new house and Dad's friend who has the puppies. Lauren hadn't thought much of it at the time. Kids say things. But now, in retrospect, it sounded like something planned. Like something Max had been told to expect. The airport moment wasn't just a fluke. It was the culmination of years of doubt, of fragments Lauren had collected like broken glass, sharp, disjointed, painful to hold. When she saw those boys, it wasn't a question. It was a confirmation. But now she needed proof. She needed names. She needed someone to believe her. And she wasn't going to stop until she got it. But here's where things get even murkier. As she began circulating images of the boys she'd seen, sketched from memory with the help of a forensic artist, she received an anonymous package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single USB drive. On it, grainy footage from a security camera in what appeared to be a bus terminal. The date stamp was just 4 months after the fire. And there they were again. 2 small boys, silent and visibly scared, walking hand in hand beside a man in a gray hoodie. He looked over his shoulder constantly, never letting go of them. No sound. No location data. But it was them. She knew it. Still, questions outnumbered answers. Who took them? Why fake their deaths? Was it a custody dispute gone rogue, or something darker, something organized? Were they being hidden or trafficked? Every theory led to more questions, and each person she tried to trust either vanished, deflected, or turned against her. Was someone watching her? Was she being warned off? Or was this all some delusion born of unbearable grief? As Lauren stood on the edge of the airport terminal that day, heart racing, hands trembling, she had a choice to make. Run after the boys and risk being seen. Or stay back, take a photo, and quietly follow. What she chose next would set off a chain reaction that would force secrets into the light. secrets that had been buried for 6 long years. But before we get there, you need to see what she saw. Because once you do, you'll never look at this story the same way again. And the next name that appears will change everything. Lauren's hands were still trembling as she exited the terminal, the photo she managed to snap of the 2 boys burning like fire in her phone. She didn't chase them, not yet. She knew better than to act impulsively. That one photo, blurry as it was, could be the beginning of everything or the end of another false hope. But as she stood there, struggling to steady her breath, something strange happened. A woman in a crisp, navy suit approached her, too polished to be a traveler, too calm to be random. She didn't introduce herself, didn't ask questions, just handed Lauren a manila envelope with no markings and whispered, "Be careful who you trust," before disappearing into the crowd. Inside the envelope was a printed image, Lauren's photo of the boys, the one she had just taken moments earlier. Someone had accessed it before she'd even uploaded it or sent it to anyone. That was the moment Lauren realized she wasn't the only one watching. She rushed to her car, nerves electrified, every movement feeling heavier than the last. How had they gotten her photos so fast? Her phone hadn't been hacked, she was sure of that. Or at least, she had been sure. But now, nothing felt certain. Back home, she powered everything down, covered her laptop's webcam, and pulled out the old, cracked burner phone she used only for communicating with Helen. But when she called, there was no answer, just a strange mechanical noise before the line went dead. That was unlike Helen, who was methodical and sharp, the type who never missed a call unless something was seriously wrong. Lauren waited an hour, then drove to Helen's office. The door was locked. No lights inside. The blinds were drawn. And taped to the glass was a simple note. Closed until further notice, due to family emergency. But Helen didn't have any family. At least, not that she ever mentioned. And just like that, her only real ally had gone dark. The tension clawed its way into Lauren's chest like a vice. Something was off. The pieces didn't just suggest foul play anymore, they screamed it. As she retraced her steps, she thought about the people she'd contacted in recent weeks, the private online group for parents of missing children, the local journalist who had agreed to look into the insurance angle, the tech guy who offered to analyze metadata from the airport photo. One by one, they'd all gone quiet. Emails bounced back. Calls went unanswered. Even the forum was suddenly shut down for maintenance. Lauren was being cut off, isolated. And whoever was doing it knew her every move. Determined not to be silenced, she returned to her apartment and decided to dig into Helen's files. A week earlier, Helen had given her a USB drive, just in case. Lauren hadn't opened it yet, worried that poking around too early could compromise what little investigation they had left. But now, with nowhere else to turn, she slid it into her old laptop and opened the only folder inside, labeled Chimera. Inside were dozens of documents, surveillance photos, scanned reports, even voice memos. One file, a recorded call, chilled her to the bone. It was Helen speaking to a man whose voice had been distorted electronically. He mentioned dates, locations, and something about a placement operation. Then the line clicked off. Lauren didn't understand all of it, but one thing was clear. This went beyond a simple abduction or a custody dispute. There were layers here. Hidden agendas. Coordinated movements. And the scariest part? Her children may have been taken as part of something far more organized than she'd ever imagined. But the biggest shock was still to come. Among the photos on the drive, there was one of Adam, her ex-husband, taken just 2 months prior. He was standing outside a modest brick house in a quiet Denver neighborhood, shaking hands with a man Lauren recognized immediately. It was the same man from the grainy bus terminal footage. The man in the gray hoodie. The one who had walked off with her boys. Her blood ran cold. Had Adam known all along? Had he helped them disappear? Or was he being coerced, used, just another piece in the puzzle? Torn between rage and horror, she drove to the Denver address that night. The house was dark. The street was empty. She sat in her car for hours, watching, waiting. Just before 2 a.m., the porch light flicked on. A shadow moved behind the curtains. But then her phone lit up, a new message from an unknown number. Stop looking. You're endangering them. You've already been warned. Lauren's heart sank. Whoever this was, they weren't bluffing. They knew where she was. They were watching. And they claimed to be protecting the boys. But from what? The next morning, she returned to the house in daylight, hoping to confront whoever lived there. But when she arrived, the place was empty, cleared out, blinds down, mailbox removed. Like no one had ever lived there. She knocked on the neighbor's door, pretending to be a delivery person looking for a missing address. An elderly man answered, confused. That house, he said. It's been vacant for years. No one lives there. It didn't make sense. She had seen the lights. She had seen movement. She had proof on Helen's USB. And yet, just like everything else in this nightmare, reality kept slipping through her fingers. Back home, Lauren checked the USB one more time, only to discover the folder had vanished. Corrupted. Unreadable. Everything Helen had left her was gone. And in its place, a single new file appeared, one she hadn't opened before. Final warning, MP4. And that's when the knock came at her door. Not loud, not aggressive, just steady. She froze, because no one knew she was back. No one knew she lived there, at least no one was supposed to know. She stared at the door, her breath caught in her throat, the screen still glowing in front of her. And as the knock came again, this time slower, more deliberate, Lauren had to decide answer it or run. Either way, what waited on the other side was going to change everything she thought she knew about her past, about her children, and about the person she thought she could trust the most. Lauren didn't move. The knocking stopped, but its echoes seemed to live inside her ribcage. Whoever was outside knew she was in there. She glanced at her laptop screen again. Final warning, MP4 still staring back at her like a ticking bomb. Every instinct told her not to open it. Not yet, but a deeper, more desperate instinct told her this might be the last breadcrumb she'd get. With her heart hammering in her chest, she double-clicked the file. The screen flickered. Static buzzed, then cut to black, and a voice came through, mechanical, warped, but unmistakably human. You're getting close. Too close. You think this is about them. But it's not. It never was. They were just the beginning. Then a flash of an image, blurry but recognizable, a hospital hallway, security footage style, with a date in the top corner, December 13th, the day before the fire 6 years ago. The camera showed Nate walking down the corridor, holding a clipboard and talking to someone whose face was pixelated. What was he doing in a hospital when he was supposed to be with Lauren and the twins preparing for their holiday trip? And why did the hallway look like a psychiatric wing? Before she could rewind the footage, her phone lit up again. Another message, this time not to her. It was from her sister Emily, sent in a group text to Lauren and their cousin Tara. Whoever just called me. Don't answer unknown numbers. Someone's threatening me about something you're looking into, Lauren. I'm serious. I think my phone is tapped. Lauren's stomach dropped. Until now, she'd kept her sister far from the hunt, believing it was safer that way. Emily had a family, a quiet life in the suburbs, a husband who worked in finance, and 3 young kids. She wasn't built for this kind of storm. But apparently, that wasn't enough to keep the wolves away. Lauren called her immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. She left a message that sounded brave on the outside but was barely stitched together inside. Don't say anything to anyone. Don't answer any calls. I'll come to you. On the drive to Emily's, her mind reeled. Whoever was behind this operation, this cover-up, this kidnapping, whatever it was, had now expanded their reach. Lauren had assumed they only wanted to silence her, to bury the past, to keep her from finding her sons. But this wasn't just damage control anymore. This was strategy. This was threat management. And that made her wonder. Had someone else cracked part of the mystery before her? Had someone gotten too close and been erased? Pulling into Emily's neighborhood, Lauren noticed a black SUV idling near the corner of the cul-de-sac. Not unusual in a suburb, but the windows were tinted blacker than normal, and no one got in or out for the 10 minutes she sat watching from down the street. Just as she reached for her phone to take a photo, the SUV pulled away slowly, like it knew it had been seen. When she finally got to Emily's door, her sister opened it looking pale, eyes darting around like she expected someone to be behind Lauren. "They showed up here," she whispered before Lauren even spoke. "A man." He didn't say who he was. "Just that if you keep digging, my kids won't be safe." He knew their names, Lauren. He knew their school. Lauren stepped inside, every muscle tense, and caught sight of Emily's living room. Half-packed boxes stacked along the walls, photo frames missing from shelves, the kind of rush job someone only does when they're running from something real. "We're leaving tonight. Matt doesn't even know where. I'm not taking chances." But before Lauren could respond, Emily pulled something from her jacket. A USB drive. "This came in the mail yesterday. No return address. It was postmarked from Pittsburgh. No note, no explanation." Lauren's throat tightened. Pittsburgh had never been mentioned in anything before, not by Nate, not in the evidence, not in Helen's research. She took the drive without a word, already knowing this was about to upend everything she thought she knew. Back at her apartment, Lauren watched the second drive's contents load with a sense of dread already swelling in her chest. This time, the file was a video interview, clearly old, dated 6 years back, of a woman sitting in a dimly lit room. She was speaking into the camera, visibly shaken, hands trembling. The subtitle read, "Testimony, Dr. Michelle Rourke, Child Relocation Program." Lauren froze. The woman looked familiar. It took her a moment to realize this was the same woman Nate had been seen with in the hospital hallway on the corrupted footage from the first USB. Dr. Rourke was speaking frantically, almost as if she was afraid someone was about to barge in. "These parents don't know," she said. "They think we're helping them. They think it's adoption or witness protection. But it's not. These kids, they're part of something else. Some of them were pulled from homes under false pretenses. I didn't sign up for this. I didn't know. But now they're trying to make me disappear too." Lauren's head was spinning. Child relocation program? Adoption? What had Nate gotten involved in? And what kind of organization had the power to erase people like Helen, silence whistleblowers like Dr. Rourke, and send anonymous threats across state lines? The idea that this was bigger than a father's desperate act or a mother's tragedy began to take hold. This wasn't just about Max and Mason anymore. It was about dozens, maybe hundreds of children, all hidden under the illusion of death, misdiagnosis, or disaster. But if that was true, then someone had helped Nate do it. Someone had created the legal and digital smoke screens to bury their existence. Maybe it was Dr. Rourke. Maybe it was the man from the airport. Maybe it was someone else entirely. But suddenly, the story Lauren had been building in her head, of a grieving father losing grip on reality and doing something drastic, started to unravel. What if Nate wasn't the puppet master? What if he was just another pawn, blackmailed or bought into submission? Or worse, what if Nate had been trying to protect the boys all along, and the real threat was something far more complex than she'd ever imagined? And then her phone vibrated again. A single new message. Just one word. Stop. No number. No sender. Just that. As if this was no longer a warning. It was a countdown. Lauren barely slept that night. Every creak in the walls, every car passing outside sent a jolt of electricity down her spine. Her apartment, once her place of refuge, now felt like a stage, lit from every angle and watched from unseen seats. She couldn't shake the feeling that the walls had ears, that every movement was being tracked, recorded, filed away. The chilling message, "Stop," still sat on her phone like a scar she couldn't scrub away. No timestamp, no contact details. Just that single word, plain and hollow, yet somehow more terrifying than anything else she'd faced in the past 6 years. Her mind cycled through every possible angle, trying to determine if this was a bluff to scare her into silence, or a promise of what was coming. By morning, her paranoia had calcified into a grim resolve. She needed to do more than just collect evidence, she needed help. Not just Helen, not her sister, but someone who could look deeper. Someone who understood the shadows she was now standing in. She called a former investigative journalist named Mason Grant, a contact Helen had vouched for in the past. He used to expose corruption cases tied to state agencies until he mysteriously stepped away from public work and started freelancing under an alias. When she finally reached him through an encrypted channel, his voice was dry, cautious. He agreed to meet, but not in public, not even at a private office. No devices, he warned. No Bluetooth, no GPS. If they've started messaging you directly, you're already compromised.
Come alone.
And don't tell anyone where you're going. He gave her coordinates to a remote coffee roaster's shack tucked along a back road in the outskirts of Boulder. The kind of place you'd never find unless you were looking for it, and even then, only if someone wanted you to. Lauren followed his instructions to the letter, double-checking her mirrors, taking unnecessary turns, noting every vehicle behind her. Still, her heart pounded like it was on a countdown timer she couldn't see. When she arrived at the shack, it was dead quiet. The wooden building stood crooked on its foundation, surrounded by dying trees and frostbitten brush. She stepped inside to find Mason already waiting, seated behind a chipped table with an open notebook, no laptop, no phone in sight. He motioned for her to sit, eyes scanning the door behind her as if he was expecting someone to follow. She recapped everything, from the photo at the airport to the USB drives to the chilling video of Dr. Rourke. Mason scribbled notes furiously, the kind of shorthand that suggested he'd seen similar patterns before, but when she mentioned the child relocation program, his pen froze mid-word. He leaned forward, voice lower now, like the air itself might be listening. "I've only heard whispers," he said. Rumors about an unsanctioned project buried under layers of bureaucracy, something connected to high-risk custody battles, psych evaluations, and sealed juvenile cases. The kind of files that disappear even from federal databases. Most people who mention it, they vanish or they retract everything. Before she could ask more, his eyes flicked up and narrowed. A subtle sound outside. Tires on gravel. He motioned for her to stay silent, then disappeared through a back exit. Lauren waited, breath caught in her lungs, gripping her coat tighter as footsteps crunched outside the door. Then, without warning, the front window shattered. A metal canister rolled across the floor, spewing thick, blinding smoke. Lauren choked as her eyes stung, stumbling toward the back, gasping for breath. She pushed open the rear door, expecting Mason, but he was gone. His car, his bag, everything. Only the imprints of tire tracks leading into the woods remained. Lauren ran, hacking through the smoke, trying to keep her legs beneath her. She reached her car and drove blindly, barely able to see, heart racing like it was trying to outrun the suffocating fear behind her. Back in town, she parked in a grocery lot and sat behind the wheel, hands trembling as she stared at her own reflection in the mirror. Her eyes were bloodshot, her throat raw, her mind spinning. This wasn't a scare tactic anymore. This was a direct strike. Whoever she was up against had resources, real surveillance, real operational capacity. They'd been one step ahead since day one, but now they weren't hiding their hand. And what haunted her most wasn't that Mason had vanished, it was that he'd expected it. The way he moved, the urgency in his eyes. He knew this would happen. And still he'd come. Desperate, Lauren called Emily again. No answer. She called Tara. Straight to voicemail. She even tried her ex-husband's old number, disconnected. It was as if a hole had opened up behind her and swallowed everyone she knew. Panic rose like bile in her throat. Was she imagining it? Was this paranoia? Or was this how isolation really began, slowly, then all at once? She returned to her apartment that night only to find the door ajar. Inside, the lights were off, but the faint glow of her laptop screen flickered from the kitchen. Someone had accessed it. She crept in, every sense on fire, clutching a wrench from her car. The laptop screen displayed a single image, a new file she hadn't downloaded. It was a photo of Max and Mason, but not from 6 years ago. This was recent. And they were in school uniforms she didn't recognize, standing in front of a building with no signage. But it wasn't the boys that made her knees buckle. It was the figure standing behind them. A woman, holding their backpacks, smiling at the camera. A woman Lauren had never seen before. A stranger was raising them. And someone wanted her to know. But why now? Why reveal this piece of the puzzle just as they were silencing everyone else? Why show her the truth, only to pull the rug out from under her again? Her mind flashed to Dr. Rourke's words. They think it's adoption or witness protection. But it's not. Were the boys truly safe, or were they part of something deeper, darker? Something engineered? As the night dragged on, Lauren realized something even more terrifying than being watched. She was being guided, not silenced, not erased, manipulated, like she was being led down a path someone wanted her to follow. The only question now was, why? The silence in Lauren's apartment wasn't comforting anymore. It was oppressive, a vacuum filled with too many questions and not enough answers. She sat frozen at her kitchen table. The image of her boys burned into her mind, the strange woman's smile branding itself like a slow scar. She didn't cry. Not because the grief had passed, but because what she felt now wasn't grief. It was rage. Determined, precise, calculated rage. She didn't care if it was a trap. She had to know who the woman was. But before she could begin that search, her phone rang again. Not a text, not a warning, a call. And the name that flashed on the screen nearly stopped her heart. Helen. After all this time. The number was unknown, but that voice, unmistakable, ragged with urgency and something else. Fear. Lauren, listen carefully. I don't have long. They found me. I was wrong. About everything. The words sent a shockwave through Lauren's body, every nerve on edge. She clutched the phone tighter, barely able to speak. What do you mean you were wrong? She managed, her voice trembling. Helen's breath was rapid, like she was running. Nate didn't take the boys. He was trying to stop it. The agency, the program, we thought it was a network of private actors. But it wasn't. It was state-sanctioned, legitimate on the surface, but buried beneath layers of secrecy. And your boys, Lauren, they were flagged years before the fire. Not by chance. Not randomly. They were selected. Their DNA, their cognitive markers, their behavioral patterns. They fit a profile. Lauren blinked, stunned. A profile for what? Helen paused, as if deciding whether to say it. Then the words came fast, clipped, final. Experimental resilience training. Psychological modeling. They're not missing Lauren. They're being raised. Indoctrinated. Studied. Everything Lauren believed cracked open in that moment. All her rage toward Nate, her obsession with finding the person who stole her sons, the suspicion that this was about revenge or escape, it all dissolved into something far worse. Her children weren't just taken, they were targeted, tracked, selected by some system she never even knew existed. A shadow operation functioning like a legitimate agency on the surface, but hiding a course so sinister it made all her theories seem naive. The adoption papers? Fake. The fire? Staged. And now the photo? It wasn't a threat. It was proof. Proof that her boys were still within the system. Still subjects in an experiment she couldn't begin to understand. But Helen wasn't done. Her voice grew more desperate. There's something else. Someone you trust. Someone close. They're not who they say they are. You need to get out now. Don't go back to Emily. Don't contact Tara. Don't trust the evidence. It's been planted to lead you off course. Lauren's pulse was thundering now. Who, Helen? Who are you talking about? But the line went dead. No static. No click. Just silence. Lauren screamed into the phone, called back. Nothing. She sat there staring at the screen until a notification popped up. An email. From Tara. Subject line. Read this in private. With shaking fingers, Lauren opened the message. Attached was a scanned letter, yellowed and handwritten. The signature at the bottom made her breath catch. Nate. But the date was wrong. It had been written 2 weeks after the fire. In the letter, Nate apologized. Not for leaving. Not for disappearing. But for what he'd agreed to. Lauren, I thought I was protecting them. They said it was only temporary, a safe program, one that would give them a future. I signed the documents because they convinced me it was best. They showed me files, data, predictions. They said the fire would be the easiest way to make a clean break. I didn't know they'd erase everything. I didn't know you'd be left thinking they were dead. Lauren's whole world flipped inside out. Nate hadn't run away from the family. He tried to save it in the only way he thought he could. And Tara, how did she get this letter? Why hadn't she told Lauren? Suddenly, her cousin's vague messages, her strange silence the last few weeks, it all came into sharper focus. Lauren clicked open the second attachment. Surveillance footage. Not of the twins. Not of Nate. Of her. Footage of Lauren at a gas station. At the coffee shack. At Emily's. Tara had been monitoring her. Or someone had been feeding Tara intel. Either way, she was part of it. The floor felt like it tilted beneath Lauren's feet. She thought she was chasing answers with allies at her side. But now, she wasn't sure who was a friend and who was feeding her breadcrumbs. The woman in the photo with her boys, was she a caretaker or a handler? Was Emily's warning real or scripted? And why now? Why suddenly show her the truth only to pull Helen away and reveal a new layer of deception? The whole investigation might have been stage-managed from the beginning. A game of chess where every piece she moved was part of someone else's strategy. For the first time, Lauren realized she might not be the hunter. She might be the experiment. And whatever they planned for her next was already in motion. Lauren's hands trembled as she scrolled through the images Tara had attached, pictures of her own movements, all taken from angles and locations that couldn't have been accidental. This wasn't a random trail of breadcrumbs left by a hacker or a rogue agent. This was targeted surveillance, precise and personal, curated by someone who knew her habits better than any stranger ever could. Her thoughts immediately flew to Tara, the woman who had practically raised her after her parents passed, the cousin who had once slept at the foot of Lauren's hospital bed for 3 nights when she had surgery at 16. The idea that Tara, warm, steady, always protective Tara, had been hiding something this massive made Lauren feel like she was unraveling from the inside out. But now there was no time to dwell on pain or betrayal. She had to act. With the footage still open on her phone, she drove straight to Tara's house, her mind spinning with too many questions and not enough clarity. The drive felt endless despite being only 15 minutes, and by the time she reached Tara's suburban driveway, her chest was pounding with the weight of what she had to do. She knew this could break her, could burn every bridge she had left, but she needed answers, and she needed them now. As she stepped out of the car, she noticed the front door was slightly ajar. That alone would have been enough to put her on edge, but the silence inside the house was worse. Lauren called out Tara's name. No response. The kitchen light flickered. Dishes were still on the table. A tea kettle sat cold on the stove, abandoned. She moved through the hallway slowly, heart thudding, until she reached Tara's office. That's where she found her. Tara sat in her armchair, not restrained, not unconscious, just waiting. Her expression wasn't shocked or apologetic. It was tired, hollow, like someone who had carried a terrible burden for too long. I was wondering when you'd come, she said softly, eyes not meeting Lauren's. You weren't supposed to find that letter. Lauren felt fury and sorrow boil inside her at once, like her body was split down the middle. What is this? You've been tracking me? Feeding me leads while hiding something this huge? What else aren't you telling me, Tara? Were you part of it? Tara's silence was answer enough. She rubbed her temples and gestured to the couch. Sit, please. You deserve the truth, but you won't like any of it. Lauren stayed standing. Tara took a breath and began. 6 years ago, when Nate signed those papers, he didn't just disappear into the system. He didn't go rogue. He joined it. The relocation program is real, but it's not just about protecting children. It's about shaping them, maximizing their potential by removing them from unfit environments, places where trauma or dysfunction would hold them back. That fire, the entire event, it was orchestrated not to hurt you, but to rewrite your children's history. Nate agreed, because they convinced him it was the only path that gave Max and Owen a chance at something extraordinary. He believed it. I did too. I helped him arrange the contact. I believed in the mission. Lauren felt like the floor vanished beneath her. Her legs went weak, and she finally sank onto the couch, too stunned to speak. "You knew they were alive," she whispered. "All this time." Tara nodded. "But I didn't know what they were becoming until it was too late." The program changed after Nate's death. It went darker. Less focused on potential, more focused on control. Monitoring them. Conditioning them. You weren't supposed to get this far. Once you got the first USB, they flagged you. I tried to mislead you, to slow you down, but you kept pushing. And now they've given me a choice." She stood and reached into a drawer, pulling out a sleek, government-issued tablet. On the screen was a simple ultimatum: withdraw and accept a monitored protection status, or proceed and lose all further access to information about Max and Owen forever. Lauren stared at the screen, rage and despair surging inside her like a storm. They were offering her silence. Safety. A clean end to the nightmare. No more surveillance, no more threats, no more mystery. All she had to do was walk away. Forget. Let her children slip into the system and live out whatever life had been designed for them. But if she refused, if she kept digging, she risked severing her only remaining connection to them. Permanently. "You have to choose," Tara said gently, her voice thick with emotion. "If you fight them, there's no going back. But if you walk away, they'll protect you. You can live. Maybe even heal." Lauren stood slowly, her vision narrowing, her breath uneven. Every fiber in her being screamed for justice, for truth, for her children. But for the first time, she wasn't just fighting for them. She was fighting against an entire machine. And now, she faced the hardest question of all. How far was she willing to go? And what was she willing to lose? Because one choice would bury the truth forever, the other might bury her. Lauren didn't remember driving home. Her hands were on the wheel, her foot on the gas, but her mind was spiraling through the truth she'd just been handed like it was falling through glass. Every memory of Tara, every moment they'd shared, every tear they'd cried together, was now tainted with the knowledge that Tara had been complicit in stealing her sons. And yet, as sickening as the betrayal was, something deeper twisted inside her. The realization that Tara might not have been the only one. This wasn't about a few rogue agents or a mismanaged protection program. This was systemic, structured. A network designed to keep secrets buried by any means necessary. And Lauren was now at the center of it. The moment she stepped through her front door, the first thing she noticed was silence, but not the safe kind. Her coat was still hanging on the door exactly how she left it, but something about the air was wrong. It felt watched. She turned toward the hallway, and that's when she saw it. Her laptop, which she'd left closed on the coffee table, was open. The screen was black, but the power light blinked. A flash drive had been inserted. Carefully, she approached and touched the mouse pad. The screen lit up instantly, and a video began to play. No menu. No controls. No option to exit. It was a surveillance feed of a room. Sterile white walls. A pair of desks. 2 boys sitting silently. Her breath caught as her eyes focused. It was them. Max and Owen. Older now, taller, leaner, more serious, but unmistakably them. The video had no sound, but Lauren watched, heart in her throat, as a man entered the frame. He wore a navy blue uniform with a silver pin, a logo she didn't recognize. He handed Max a file and pointed to a monitor. Max nodded and began typing, like it was all routine. Owen sat still, unmoving, eyes straight ahead. Then, like he could feel her watching, Max suddenly looked up, straight into the camera. And he smiled. Not a warm, childlike grin, but something else. Something too calm, too knowing. The screen cut to black, and a message appeared. Stop searching. They don't remember you. They don't need to. Lauren staggered backward, her mind screaming. It was a lie, it had to be. Her boys couldn't have forgotten her. They couldn't have become whatever this was. She yanked the drive from the laptop, her hands shaking, and grabbed her phone to call Emily. Her best friend had always been there, through the search, the breakdowns, the quiet nights when the wait was too much. But as the phone rang, her gut twisted. She suddenly remembered something from days ago. When Lauren had told Emily about the dashcam photo, Her reaction had been oddly measured. Not shocked. Not confused. Like she already knew. When Emily picked up, her voice was smooth.
Too smooth. Hey.
You okay? Lauren didn't answer the question. Where are you right now? She asked tightly. There was a pause. Home? Why? Lauren didn't wait for an invitation. She grabbed her keys and drove straight to Emily's place, blood pulsing in her ears. She didn't know what she was going to find, but she was done being passive. No more guessing. No more waiting for someone to hand her pieces of the puzzle. This time, she was going to rip it open herself. Emily opened the door casually, like she wasn't standing in the middle of a firestorm. Lauren, what's going on? Lauren stepped inside and shut the door behind her, her voice low but fierce. How long have you been in contact with them? Emily's eyes narrowed, a flash of panic darting through her expression before she quickly masked it. I don't know what you're talking about. Lauren pulled the flash drive from her coat pocket and slammed it on the counter. This was plugged into my laptop when I got home. My sons are alive, and someone wants me to think they're gone. Or worse, that they've forgotten me. Now tell me the truth, Emily. Right now. There was a long, unbearable silence. And then, Emily exhaled. They came to me 6 months ago. I didn't know what it was at first, a government program, intelligence operation, I don't know. They offered me protection. They said if I helped monitor you, they'd make sure I stayed out of it. That I wouldn't lose everything like you did. Lauren's heart fractured all over again. So you lied to me. You watched me fall apart and you said nothing. Emily nodded slowly, tears finally breaking through. I thought I was helping you. They said if you got too close, you'd be in danger. That this thing, it's way bigger than just Max and Owen. It's national security. AI behavioral modeling, genetic forecasting, intelligence recruitment, it's all part of it. And your boys, they're not just test subjects. They're candidates. Lauren felt dizzy. This wasn't about hiding children or escaping trauma. This was about designing the future. A system using children to shape military strategy, predict global behavior, maybe even control the next generation of leadership. And her sons were in the center of it. Everything she thought she knew had been a smokescreen. A domestic tragedy carefully constructed to disguise an international operation. And now, she wasn't just a grieving mother. She was a threat. Emily walked over slowly and placed something in Lauren's hand. A keycard. This is the only chance you'll get, she whispered. It's access to a site they use for psychological debriefings. In the city. If your boys are still in phase 2, they'll be there. Lauren clutched the keycard like it was oxygen. But she knew what this meant. If she used it, if she crossed that line, there'd be no turning back. She would be going to war against something far bigger than herself. A machine that didn't just erase people, but rewrote them. She looked up at Emily, tears streaming down her face. If I don't come back, Emily nodded solemnly. I'll make sure the world hears your story. Lauren walked out into the night, her path clear and terrifying. She had one shot left to reclaim her sons. And she was ready to burn the whole system down to do it. The cold steel of the underground facility seemed to hum with secrets as Lauren stepped through the access corridor, the stolen keycard clenched in her hand, her breath shallow and heart pounding in her chest like a war drum. The deeper she went, the more sterile and clinical the environment became. Polished floors, walls lined with security panels, motion-detecting lights that flickered on and off, as if reacting to her very heartbeat. It wasn't just the silence that unnerved her. It was the feeling that something was always just beyond her peripheral vision, watching, calculating. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back, to escape before whatever lurked at the core of this operation swallowed her whole. But she pushed forward, because behind one of these doors, behind one of these endless mirrored glass panes, were her boys. She reached the final checkpoint and saw the emblem she'd only glimpsed before in the video, the insignia etched in silver over matte black walls, shaped like a circuit board tree branching into the silhouette of an eagle. It wasn't just a government logo. It was something newer, something private. A hybrid, a merging of military influence and corporate ambition. Lauren scanned the card. The door clicked. It opened to a long room bathed in white light and silence, the walls bare, The only furniture a simple table with 2 chairs on either side. A man was already sitting there, his back straight, hands folded neatly. His suit was too perfect, his demeanor too calm. And when he looked up, his eyes gave away everything. He wasn't a bureaucrat. He was the architect. "You've come a long way, Lauren," he said softly, as if congratulating her on a test well passed. "I expected you sooner." She didn't sit. "Where are they?" she asked, her voice low, almost trembling. "I want to see them."
Now.
The man leaned back, unbothered. "You've already seen them. You just didn't understand what you were looking at." He gestured toward a screen built into the wall. With a wave of his hand, it lit up. Footage rolled again, this time from inside what looked like a classroom. Teenagers were seated at desks, each plugged into some sort of interactive terminal. And there they were, Max and Owen. Their movements were smooth, robotic almost, but their faces were unmistakable. "They're functioning at a level beyond what any parent can comprehend," the man continued. "You lost them 6 years ago. That pain was real. But this version of them, they're contributing to the future of national defense, economic forecasting, behavioral modeling. They're vital now." Lauren stared at the screen in stunned silence. "What did you do to them?" The man stood. "We didn't take them.
We recruited them."
They were flagged early through pediatric behavior scans, early language acquisition anomalies, neurological patterns. "They were children," she snapped, stepping closer, fury rising in her voice. "You stole their lives. You made me think they were dead. You made me bury empty coffins. And you were a necessary casualty," he said without a hint of remorse. "If you'd fought it, the operation would have been exposed. Your grief gave us time." That was it. The final truth. This wasn't just a tragedy or an accident. It was a calculated deception, executed with surgical precision to exploit a mother's agony. Lauren's breath shook as she looked at the man, her vision blurring. "I want them back." He tilted his head, curious. "Back. You don't seem to understand. The memory of you was excised.
Surgically.
They don't remember your face, your voice, your name. They were rewritten. You're a ghost in their programming now. Bringing you in would corrupt the data." She was already moving before she thought. She charged toward him, grabbing the chair and swinging it hard. It crashed into the wall as he ducked, stumbling back. Alarms blared instantly. Red lights flashed. The facility rumbled with lockdown protocols. She turned and sprinted out the door, following signs that read, "AI integration, cognitive wing," praying that she could reach them before it was too late. As she tore through corridor after corridor, she saw doors slam shut behind her, automated lockdowns closing off her path in reverse, like the building was trying to trap her inside itself. Finally, she turned a corner and found herself face to face with a long glass observation wall. Behind it, Max and Owen.
Standing.
Facing a large screen. A program was running, displaying simulations of strategic global conflict zones, and they were responding in real time, calling out coordinates, analyzing patterns, suggesting decisions with eerie precision. Lauren slammed her fists against the glass. "Max. Owen. It's me," she screamed. "It's Mom." They didn't move. She kept banging, desperate, her voice cracking. "Please, please just look at me. Remember who you are?" And then Max turned. His eyes flickered with something real. Not confusion. Not logic. Something deeper. Recognition. The technician beside them shouted, "We have a memory breach." Owen followed, his gaze settling on her. He stepped forward, tilting his head as if sorting through something scrambled, some fragmented image deep inside his mind. Then, in the softest whisper, he said, "Mom?" Guards flooded the hallway behind her, barking orders. But before they could reach her, the entire system crashed. Lights blinked out. Screens went dark. A pulse swept through the room, like an EMP had detonated in the heart of the facility. In the chaos, a side door opened, Emily. Her hair was soaked from sweat and rain, but her face was fierce. "Now," she shouted. Lauren ran. Max and Owen met her in the hallway, dazed but moving. She grabbed their hands, warm, real, and pulled them into the escape route. Behind them, the man in the suit watched on a backup monitor, his lips pressed into a cold line. "She got them," an assistant said. He shook his head. "No," he whispered. "We let her." The assistant blinked. "Sir?" He turned away, already leaving the room. "We needed to know if the maternal bond could override our programming. Now we know." The twist hit like a thunderclap. This wasn't a rescue.
It was still a test.
And Lauren was still a variable. The final question hadn't been answered. But it was coming. Weeks had passed since Lauren escaped the facility, her sons at her side, disoriented but alive. The world outside hadn't changed, but she had. Every breath she took now carried the weight of 6 years spent in grief, in confusion, in blind hope that bordered on madness, and now, finally, in the light of truth. She had them back. Max and Owen. Their eyes still had the same deep brown hue that used to sparkle at bedtime when they asked for just one more story, but behind those familiar gazes lingered shadows, complex algorithms and memories that didn't belong, fractures from years of psychological engineering. The government denied everything. The news ran a short story about a disrupted test trial in a military research facility, but no names were ever mentioned and no charges were filed. Whatever Lauren had exposed, it had been carefully swept under the rug. The trending headlines moved on to celebrity divorces, election rumors, and viral challenges, while the truth of what happened to her children was buried under a mountain of misinformation, just another ghost file locked away in a classified vault. They now lived in a safe house in Montana, far from the city, far from the cameras and the watchers. Emily stayed with them, sleeping with a gun under her pillow and one eye always open. She never said much after the escape, just that she owed Lauren everything. The boys were slowly learning how to feel again. They didn't remember their birthdays, their favorite cartoons, or the name of their old dog, but there were moments, small, fleeting sparks, that reminded Lauren of who they once were. One night, as the wind howled through the pine trees outside their cabin, Owen brought her a crumpled old drawing he found tucked inside one of the moving boxes. It was something he'd drawn before the fire, a picture of the 3 of them holding hands under a blue sky. "I think I made this," he said softly, unsure of himself. Lauren knelt beside him, wrapped her arms around him, and whispered, "You did, baby. You did." For the first time in years, she felt like something was healing. Slowly, painfully, but healing. Still, the questions never stopped. Who else had been taken? Were there other families out there who'd buried empty coffins? And what did the man in the suit mean when he said, "We let her"? Every time Lauren turned on the TV or scrolled through social media, she saw patterns. A child prodigy who vanished from public life after being enrolled in a defense-sponsored school. A parent who claimed their teen had become unrecognizable overnight. These weren't coincidences. They were footprints, part of a larger trail she was only beginning to follow. Sometimes, she would wake up in the middle of the night and swear she heard a faint mechanical click outside the window, like a camera shutter or a sensor resetting. Emily said it was just paranoia, but Lauren knew better. She had crossed a line, and somewhere out there, people were still watching. But the biggest twist came not from outside, but from within. One rainy evening, Max sat at the kitchen table, staring at an old photo album Lauren had pieced together from salvaged family photos. His eyes scanned the images with quiet intensity until he pointed at a picture of him and Owen playing in the snow the winter before the fire. "I remember this," he said. Lauren froze. "You do?" He nodded slowly. "It smells like peppermint hot chocolate. My gloves were blue." Lauren's hands trembled as she reached for his, tears already spilling down her cheeks. It wasn't just a memory, it was his memory. Not a program. Not a code fragment. Something real had survived. That moment confirmed what Lauren had hoped all along. The truth might have been corrupted, manipulated, and buried under layers of technology and control, but the human spirit, the bond between a mother and her children, couldn't be overwritten. There would always be scars, and the road ahead would be anything but easy. But they were walking it together now, not as lab data or military assets, but as a family, as people. And yet, Even as Lauren found peace in that small breakthrough, the story refused to fully close. One afternoon, as she went to check the mail, a plain white envelope sat in the box. No stamp, no return address. Inside was a single photograph. It was grainy, but unmistakable. Max and Owen, sitting in the facilities classroom. But in the background, just barely visible, was another child. A girl, eyes wide, staring directly into the camera lens, as if she knew someone would one day find her. On the back of the photo, written in ink that smeared slightly under Lauren's thumb, were 4 chilling words: "Come find the others." The cold returned to her chest. Not fear, but purpose. She wasn't done, and neither were they.